seems like most dividend growth investors are either Team SCHD, the Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF, or Team VYM, the Vanguard High Dividend Yield ETF. Both super high quality ETFs with definitely some overlap, but two different strategies and two different basket of holdings. Not to mention, one of these ETFs offers more cash flow to investors from day one, and maybe one offers a little bit more upside. So in this video, we're going to make it very simple. We're going to go through both SCHD and VYM, explain what these ETFs are, how they work, and what they have to offer. Then later on, towards the end of the video, we're going to figure out which is the better ETF for dividend growth investors out there that want dividend income, want dividend growth, and want massive total return. So if you're a dividend growth investor, make sure to stick around for this one, drop a like down below, and let's get right into it. If you are a dividend investor who wants to level up your portfolio, you need to be tracking your dividend income consistently. And that's why I created the perfect dividend tracker that I've used to scale my dividend income up to all-time highs over the last year. Now, along with this dividend tracker, you're also going to receive my A to Z dividend investing ebook, which shows you how I personally started from $0 several years ago to now where I earn over $7,500 per month in dividends. So if you want this tracker and the ebook, go to the first link down below in my description and grab it today. So first off, going over the Vanguard High Dividend Yield ETF, the ETF that has an expense ratio of just 0.06%. The ETF summary is to track the performance of the FTSE High Dividend Yield Index, which measures the investment return of common stocks of companies characterized by high dividend yields. It also says provides a convenient way to track the performance of stocks that are forecasted to have above average dividend yields. Now, VYM has been out for quite a while, since 2006, and also has a very diversified basket of holdings with over 500 different stocks within the ETF. Now, SCHD, on the other hand, also offers a total expense ratio of just 0.06%, so the exact same there, but SCHD's objective is to track as closely as possible before fees and expenses the total return of the Dow Jones US Dividend 100 Index. Now, this index is focused on quality and sustainability of dividends, as you can see right here. And SCHD, for example, only has around 100 different holdings within the ETF, so you aren't getting as much diversification, but let's be real here, 100 different stocks is still pretty diversified. Now, looking at some of the top stocks in both VYM and SCHD. Let's look through the top 10 and see which ETF offers a better top 10 holding. So VYM, for example, offers the most exposure to names like Broadcom, JP Morgan, ExxonMobil, The Home Depot, then names like Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson, abbvie, names like Walmart, Bank of America, and Merck. Now, none of these names are necessarily ground-shattering. I mean, these are dividend-paying companies that have raised their dividends consistently over time, for the most part have solid earnings reports, but again, there's not much tech exposure in the top 10 names, which is once again why I think VYM and SCHD are always compared to each other, because SCHD also has somewhat of a similar top 10 name holding, names like Cisco, BlackRock, The Home Depot, Bristol Myers, Chevron, Verizon, Altria, names like Texas Instruments, UPS, and Pfizer. Now, another thing that's important is to try to figure out how much overlap SCHD has with VYM. And as you can see here, 86 different individual stocks are overlapped when it comes to SCHD. As far as overlap by weight goes, 21%. Now, 87.8% of SCHD's holdings, 103 of them are inside VYM. So although if you're buying into VYM, you're basically getting a ton of exposure to SCHD because most of the holdings are inside VYM. When it comes to VYM, 16.4% of VYM's holdings are in SCHD. So again, if you're focused on diversification, and if you more or less want to hold on to both the ETFs for the simple price of one, buy into VYM. Now, next, looking into VYM and SCHD's performances over multiple timeframes. On the 1 year, for example, SCHD is up around 17.5%, where VYM is up over 20%. Now, on the 10-year time frame, VYM is up around 92%, where SCHD in the 10 years is up 114%. Now, again, these numbers are not including dividends. The total return of both these ETFs compared side to side will come a little bit later on in the video. But just based off of price return over the last 10 years, SCHD does win, but either way, to be honest, both these ETFs have done pretty well. Now, as far as dividends go, this is where SCHD is going to win. If you were to compare the two, SCHD has around a 3.4% trailing 12-month dividend yield, and on the 10-year time frame, SCHD has raised their dividends around 10 or 11% consistently. Now, VYM on the last 10 or so years has raised their dividends around 7% and only offers around a 2.75% trailing 12-month. Now, the question that I would have for VYM is that, are you going to get more upside potential with names like Broadcom, JP Morgan, ExxonMobil, The Home Depot, etc., etc.? Because if not, why in the world would an investor not want to buy into SCHD, where you're still going to get some upside potential if you ask me, but along with that, you're getting a larger starting dividend and more dividend growth? But I guess there's truly only one last thing to do, and this is to compare SCHD and VYM over the last 13.14 years. This is the time frame that SCHD has been trading more or less. So with the $10,000 investment into both of these investments and dividends being reinvested along the way, let's see who wins. So VYM, first off, with a $10,000 investment, that would have turned into around $45,100 over this time frame, or an average annual total return of around 12.15%, a total return of 351%, not bad whatsoever, slow and steady solid returns from an ETF that has a track record of doing so. Now SCHD, on the other hand, over this time frame, would have turned a $10,000 investment into over $50,000 and around 13% average annual total return per year, which is very impressive, around 402% as of all time. So just over this time frame, if we were looking at dividends, if we were looking at growth, if we were looking at dividends being reinvested, over this time frame, stacking up SCHD next to VYM, SCHD is in the lead, but again, just by a small margin. So now that we talked about both VYM and SCHD, we talked about the performance, we talked about the numbers, we talked about how these ETFs work and maybe what they have to offer even potentially in the future. Where does this leave us with the SCHD versus VYM argument? Even though there's tons of SCHD overlap inside of VYM, SCHD has still performed better over multiple different timeframes, and this is largely due to the fact that this ETF has offered so much dividend growth and price return over the past 13 or so years. Now my specific takeaway is that I like SCHD better than VYM just because it offers a larger starting yield and offers more dividend growth historically, which is much closer to what I personally am looking for out of building a long-term portfolio. Although VYM, on the other hand, does give you some exposure to a few different names that you're not going to find inside SCHD, and with over 500 different single stocks inside this ETF, you are getting a massive amount of diversification, which can be very important to certain investors. But regardless, both these ETFs over the long term have consistently provided investors with high quality performance, diversified exposure, all for as cheap as 0.06%. So honestly, if a long-term investor told me that they are buying into SCHD and or VYM as a foundational long-term position, I 100% would say, in my opinion, that's a great idea. But again, we'll have to see what happens in the future. So now that we talked about VYM and SCHD, we compared them both, and we found the winner. I want to hear from you guys down below. Are you personally team SCHD like I am, or are you team VYM? Let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to please drop a like on it and subscribe for more future content like this. Thanks as always for stopping by, and if you are interested in investing, make sure to check out these recent videos I posted right here.